All right, it's 7 o'clock, and I would like to call the Monday, March 25th meeting of Kimberley City Council to order, held here at Kukumanum on the traditional homelands of the Ktunaxa peoples. Welcome to those in the gallery tonight. Thank you for being here, and also those of you who are joining us on our YouTube channel. Councillor Dunneback and Councillor McBain are both missing in action this evening, both with legitimate excuses. They've given notes, so we're ready to go. Do we have any late items, Maurice?
There's no late items, Mr. Mayor.
All right, hearing none, could I have a mover to adopt? Councillor McGuire moves, Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we have 4 sets of minutes to adopt tonight. First up is the regular minutes of the council meeting held on December the 11th, 2023. Mover, please. Councillor Royer moves and Councillor Roberts seconds. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Next up, we have minutes of the regular meeting of council held on February the 12th. Mover, please. Councillor McGuire, thank you. Councillor Royer seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Now we have the minutes of the regular meeting held on March the 11th. A mover, please. Councillor Royer moves. Councillor McGuire seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. And finally, we have the minutes of the Accessibility Advisory Committee held on February the 7th. Mover, please. Councillor Roberts, thank you. And Councillor Royer seconds. Any opposed? That motion is carried. All right, formalities out of the way. First item of new business tonight is the, pardon me, support of partnering with the RDEK application to the Disaster Risk Reduction Climate Adaptation Fundraising Grant. We've got a couple of motions on the floor. First is that council directs staff to provide a letter of support for this grant application, and further that council directs staff to include in the letter language that makes it clear that the city's support is contingent on any grant funds received being used to undertake a regional hazards, risk and vulnerability analysis, the scope of which must include the localized risk management, risk assessment, pardon me, for the city of Kimberley. A mover, please. Councillor McGuire, thank you. Councillor Royer seconds. Discussion. Over to you, Chief.
So kind of an odd recommendation with a little bit added onto it, and I'll just speak to it right away. The second recommendation that council directs staff to include the letter language, which make it clear that the city supports its contingent on any grant funds being received. It's to hold myself to make sure that we are receiving what we're looking for when working with the RDK. We've noticed and identified that there's a lack of agreements in place right now. So this is more so to hold us accountable with the RDK when supporting any of their grant applications. Just a little background on that.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Chief. Council, any questions or comments? Councillor Roberts, go ahead.
So I did have a question as I was reading it earlier, and so I am supportive of providing a letter of support to the RDK for stuff, and secondly, I'm in support of telling them that we want to have receive something for our support. In other words, we really want to be able to have the assessment specific to the city of Kimberley to inform management of what's going on there. My question is, what if that doesn't happen? Is there going to be an opportunity down the line where we will have to take ownership of this this idea and do this whole risk assessment specific to Kimberley by ourselves at a later date?
Well, I think, Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but the only way that will happen is if the grant application is turned down, in which case we're all back at square one.
Okay.
Will?
Yeah, that's my thoughts on it as well. If the grant's not approved, the project won't be moving forward with the RDK initializing that process. So then we'd either have to come back and rework the actual grant application with UBCM or it'd be a denial. So it'd be a reapply at a later date.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cairns, go ahead.
I like the approach of collaborating with the regional district and relying on expertise that's already been developed there. And I'm in full support. Thanks, Will.
Thanks, Councillor Cairns. Anybody else? One of the considerations here, of course, is staff capacity. I mean, if we've got two entities, us and the RD, us doing parallel activities, to try and accomplish the same thing doesn't make a lot of sense. The more we can collaborate, particularly on an emergency services basis, the better that whole thing is going to be for all of us. So yeah, this is definitely a positive thing. Okay, last call for comments. Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thanks for that, Chief. Next up, we have a referral from the province with regard to the Kimberley Alpine Resort Master Plan and Operating Agreement. And the motion on the floor is that council receive the report and further, the council authorize the manager of planning to respond to the referral, summarizing comments from both council and senior managers prior to the April 7th deadline. Councillor McGuire moves and Councillor Royer seconds. Discussion. Do you want to make a comment? Oh, Troy, sorry, man. Forgot you were online. Do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, sure, I can. You can hear me okay?
You bet.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we've received a referral from the province about the proposed draft resort master plan and proposed conversion to the operating agreement for the Kimberley Alpine Resort. Bit of a new process for my experience anyway. But if I can try to summarize there, the master plan really just sets out, it's a requirement of their proposed operating agreement that they do the master plan, and really kind of a high level guiding document that sets out their plans for operation of the resort, all seasons operation. So that's part of the new provincial policy, all seasons resort policy. So it gives, I think it's good information for the city and for the community, of course, to just get a good understanding of what's being proposed by the resort operator. And as mentioned in the report there, it is a guiding document more about the operations under their agreement with the province. It does not or will not cause any kind of overriding of local government authority concerning a fish community plan or zoning rules or development decisions that affect any of the resort lands within the boundaries. So if there's any changes proposed there that are subject to permitting or subject to zoning, then if it's not already in compliance, then there'll be a process there, I guess, internally with local government approval. But on our quick review, there does not appear to be any significant concerns or implications at this time, but we'll continue our review and make sure we get our comments back, or our comments on the submission by the deadline there. And same goes for council. If there's any additional comments, we'll make sure to include those. And if needed, if there's for some reason any significant issues that arise or concerns that we think require further attention, then we'll report back to council before the deadline.
Excellent, Troy. Thank you for that. Councillor, questions or comments? Go ahead, Sandra.
I guess I'm comfortable with the fact that whatever the proposed operating agreement is, it will not override local government authority concerning the OCP zoning or development decisions on lands within the city boundary, because typically what they're trying to do here is get a greater opportunity to work on Crown land and have an agreement at that level that would probably be different than what they've had in the past. But as long as we have a bit of connection to it and nobody can run rampant without us knowing about it, I would support this.
Yeah. So just to be clear, there is no intention or proposal to expand the footprint. The footprint stays the same. This is, you have to read through the lines, I think, between the lines to see this, but the letter of intent that the resort has with the province right now is a very weak agreement. It's the only one left in the province. I think we've got 28 different ski resorts in the province, all of which are under operating agreement at this point. And for whatever reason, we have been under this letter of intent for a long time. And this is a really important thing to kind of get on board with where the operating agreements are. And it is between RCR and the province. It's a land agreement with them, not anything to do with the city of Kimberley. Just for clarification.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. Councillor Cairns.
Thanks. I'm wondering if we know what the term would be of the operating agreement here.
60
It
years.
is 60, so it's the same as the license
Yep.
of occupation. And then, so that's a long time. And so I'm looking at section 3.2, the existing environmental conditions and climate analysis, snowpack data. And it was only over the last 4 seasons that they've looked, and considering our circumstances, I would like to see climate projections included in that section. And let's see, just also noting that a lot of the basis for the work that's been provided here is from 1997, so pretty much 28 years old. So yeah, I would also like to see water conservation measures and consideration of possibilities around recycling wastewater, as many, if not most, other resorts are doing for making snow. I think they should have a backup plan in case the city would have to require them to stop drawing on drinking water to make snow. So those are a couple of comments.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor. I'm just trying to see the annual snowfall. They actually did go back further than what that chart showed. And I think it showed that North Star Mountain received an average of 550 centimeters annually. So it's between 4 and 5.5 meters of snow annually that is in the last, I don't know, whatever, 20 years or something like that, whatever the time frame is. It's in the last couple of years that they've measured in. I think this year, for example, it's just over 4 meters, 4.25 or something is the latest number. So those do kind of fluctuate over time. Further comments or questions? Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Troy?
No, I think I'm good at making notes there as the comments were made. And yeah, if there's anything further from council, probably shoot me an email. It's probably the easiest way to do it.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. So we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion is carried. Okay, next up, we have, again, another referral, provincial referral, this time under the Mines Act for work, for a permit notice of work for Summerside Sand and Gravel Pit. For the gallery and those on YouTube, this is a gravel pit that's been in operation for quite some time now that overlooks Taylor's Mill. It's kind of up in that general area of the hill. The motion on the floor is that council receive the report, and further that council authorize the manager of planning to respond to the referral, summarizing comments from council and senior managers prior to the April 5th, 2024 deadline. Councillor Royer moves. Councillor McGuire seconds. Council, any comments on this one, Troy? I think it's fairly straightforward from the staff report.
Yeah, and I think yeah, thank you for kind of pointing out the general location there. I'd say it's an expansion of the existing mine or the existing quarry, but you know, a fairly small increase in footprint area from 3.2 hectares to 3.79 hectares. They are proposing to increase the ultimate excavation depth from 1,123 meters to 1,114 meters above sea level, and some updates to the final reclamation plan there. So as I think council also knows, that property was part of the 2008 boundary expansion. So it came in with the Taylor's Mill development lands, the Headwaters development lands as well. It was kind of a requirement that that had to come in. along with those bigger pieces. The mine's been operating for many years already. There's an anticipated additional 50-year lifespan, I guess, estimated on this, including 25 years on kind of the existing or current previous plan for the mine, and this expansion would allow another 25 years of operation there. There is also a new owner of that property. I know that's come up fairly often in recent years that the previous owner was looking to sell that, and there is now a new owner there. So the quarry operation itself, I think, is kind of leased out to somebody else to operate, but the overall landowner has changed recently.
Thanks for that, Troy. Pardon me. Council, comments or questions? Councillor Roberts.
This is my night. Sorry
Thank you.
about that. I just want to comment how fortunate we are that we have something like this so close to the municipality. I mean, the number of things that we do on a day-to-day basis on roads and building and whatnot that requires gravel. If we had to bring up from afar, the pricing would just be unbelievable. So I'm really, it's fortunate that we do have it. It's fortunate that it's where it is, and it's fortunate that it's got another good life ahead of it. And I think we. I'll just leave it at that. I'm supporting this.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Further? All right, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion is carried. Bear with me, council. Okay, next up, we have the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, or FCM, Federal Infrastructure Funding Not Keeping Pace with Population Growth resolution. I'm not going to read this. There's lots of whereases and whatnot in here. Pardon me. The resolution itself is that the federal government work with agreement signatories and municipalities to maintain the CCBF as a source of direct, predictable, long-term funding for local infrastructure priorities, and further that the federal government commit in budget 2024 to the next generation of infrastructure programs. I think the fear here among municipalities is that the programs as they exist today have disappeared, and the federal government has not announced what those replacements will be yet. So this is a bit of a preemptive strike. Could I have a mover, please? Oh, hang on. We got another further. That the federal government convene provinces, territories, and municipalities to negotiate municipal growth framework to modernize the way municipalities are funded. And further, that council authorize myself to sign the draft letter to Rob Morrison, Member of Parliament. And finally, that council authorizes the manager of community development and communications to share the social media posts provided by the FCM, the city's social media sites. Mouthful. Councillor Cairns moves. Councillor Royer seconds. Discussion. Do we have anybody who's going to speak on this? I guess not. Really, it's do you want to take a step?
Yeah, I can just say a few words, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Jim.
So the CCBF program, Canada Community Building Fund, used to be the federal gas tax transfer program. So as noted in the whereas clauses, there was funding provided to Canadian municipalities each year for 10 years. In British Columbia, that money was granted directly to municipalities in 2 payments a year. And that was used, it essentially went into reserves to fund infrastructure upgrades. And for us, it represented about $350,000 a year. So 2024 will be the first year in 10 years that we haven't received those funds. So FCM, with the suggested whereas clauses and resolutions, is just asking the federal government to work with municipalities to reinstate something like that, or just some consistent, reliable funding for us to undertake infrastructure upgrades with.
Thank you, Jim. Go ahead, Councillor.
I just want to note for the benefit of those watching that FCM is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities.
Thank you for that. Council, questions or comments? One additional comment, I guess. Well, I guess 2. First off, we've got one of the clauses in here that rails on things like wastewater treatment and against kind of the way the funding happens. And we just got a grant for $66 million from the feds in the province for a wastewater treatment plant. So I think we need to just be careful, about how we phrase that. And the other comment is that modernizing the part in here about modernizing the way municipalities are funded is so critical right now. A major part of that funding is through granting streams, and grants are unpredictable. They're kind of at the whim of the senior levels of government. They are oversubscribed by the municipalities, and it creates competition amongst the municipalities for money that everybody needs. It's just, in this day and age, just a really poor way of getting money out to the provinces. So modernizing that, from my point of view anyway, and all of the resolutions we have here, that probably for me was the most important that, that's on the table. Okay, last call for comments. Call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Next up, we have the appointment of the 2024 Parcel Tax Roll Review Panel. That sounds important. It's a bit of a formality, if it's okay for me to say that, Jim. From a council point of view, not so much from CAO point of view. What we need is 2 councillors to have their name on this particular committee or panel. And it will be sometime probably when in May, when that is tabled? Oh, April.
April 22nd. Yeah.
Okay, toward the end of April. So do we have a couple of volunteers that we can, Councillor Royer is 1. Councillor Roberts is number 2. So if we could pencil their names in, and the motion on the floor is that council appoint Councillor Royer and Councillor Roberts and Troy Pollock, Manager of Planning and Sustainability, as the members of the Parcel Tax Review Panel for 2024. And further, the council schedule a sitting of the Parcel Tax Review Panel for 6:30 p.m. on April 22nd. Jim? And finally, that council authorize the Chief Financial Officer to post advance notice of time and place of the City Parcel Tax Review Panel in accordance with Section 94 of the Community Charter. Mover, please. Councillor Cairns moves. Councillor McGuire seconds. Call the question. All those in favor? The motion is carried. Excellent. Okay, we have, several items of correspondence to receive tonight. 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 pieces of correspondence. Could I have a mover to receive? Councillor Cairns moves and Councillor McGuire seconds. Comments, Council? Councillor McGuire, go ahead.
I just wanted to speak to the correspondence around Lois Creek development. To date, I don't think we've seen any development plans or anything come across the council table for this, to my knowledge anyways. I may be wrong on that, but I did want to mention that I do have a concern, and that's around our subdivision and development servicing bylaw. It hasn't been updated since 1999, and in my opinion, and before any significant developments of this type go forward, I would like to see that come to the council with some major amendments. A lot of what's in there is out of date, and I feel like it's the #1 bylaw that shapes what development in Kimberley looks like, and it's a disservice to our city not to have that up to date.
Thanks, Councillor McGuire. Troy, did you want to respond? I think you're on mute.
You can hear me now?
You got it.
Sorry,
Thank
I
you.
got a double mute button there. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Councillor McGuire. Yeah, a couple of remarks there. Council has seen some of the development proposed here, the top end of Town Site neighborhood above Fernie Street. Last year there was zoning approval and development permit approval for initial phase of that development, which is the multi-unit sites there adjacent to Fernie Street. So they're sort of the duplex units with a couple of accessory units each. So that part's approved by council. At that stage, there's no building permits or anything issued there yet, and there is some infrastructure work to happen as part of that. The other part of the proposed, there's a couple other parts, but one part, or the other part that's being contemplated right now is an initial multi-lot subdivision, what's being referred to as the Lois Park, or the park at Lois Creek. And that is, like I said, a multi-lot subdivision, which effectively would end up looping 5th and 6th Avenue past Fernie Street there now. It's kind of on what I think a lot of people refer to as kind of the upper bench area of that land. That's what's under review right now by staff with the proponents there. There's no rezoning or anything involved in that. It's complies with OCP and zoning in that regard. As far as the subdivision servicing bylaw, we are working with the current bylaw and reviewing with the proponents and their consulting engineers their proposed servicing plan. Councilman McGuire makes a really good point. I mean, we're well aware of the age of our subdivision development servicing bylaw. We have been working towards an update on that, and it is on our work plan. What we find, where we see, kind of issues or concerns with the current standards that are set out in the SDS bylaw, we are generally able to work with the, it's kind of like in some cases it recognizes there's newer or better engineering practice in some cases, and that's generally the kind of fallback position is what's the current best practice on that. I mean, off the top of my head, I can't think of any particular concerns in that regard that would, cause for delay to require that bylaw to be updated before this or other projects are approved. That being said, we do want to, get that project across the finish line and get a new bylaw in place as soon as possible. But at this stage, I wouldn't recommend holding back on any particular projects. We can otherwise work with that, and we've got experience with that on other more recent projects as well that have been approved and under construction as well.
So just to clarify, Troy, from a process point of view, you've been working with the individual developers on changes that need to be made, whether or not those are as part of the bylaw. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, from time to time, there's particular aspects of the proposal that might require further review or further discussion, and usually we can come to an agreement on if there's a more acceptable standard than what might be the minimum standard set out in our old subdivision servicing bylaw. Again, I'm not going to throw out any specific examples, but not particularly in my area, but obviously we work closely with our operations engineering department on that, and as well as our consulting engineers. But like I said, we do have we're almost a final draft of an updated subdivision development servicing bylaw, and we're looking to hopefully have that back in front of council here sometime later this year.
Thanks, Troy. Further?
Yeah, thanks for that. Just to clarify, I was aware of that, the piece that has come to council. I was just talking about, I haven't seen anything as far as the larger development goes come across our desk. So I can't really speak to a lot of these points that are being made in these letters because I actually haven't seen the plan. And then as far as the subdivision servicing bylaw goes, yeah, I mean, we're working with what we have. I'm just stressing that it is important and I'd like to see it sooner than later.
Thanks, Councillor McGuire. Councillor Cairns, then Councillor Roberts.
Thanks. I'm gonna that are really important, and we haven't talked about them and really stated them, and
with respect to the existing development or the one that we have not seen yet.
Well, actually, with there's a number of pieces. I mean, I did go to the open house, and there was just inconsistencies with information that we received to date, with what I heard there, and I think I want to actually just paraphrase, work through the letter that was written here, because I think, you know, just the bigger community conversation is really important, and a
go
lot
ahead.
of these pieces bring them up. So I'm going to read it out. Dear Mayor and Council, I'm writing to express my deep concerns regarding the proposed Lois Creek development. So this is one of 8 letters that we received that had this content. After the open house on February 29th, town site residents had more questions than answers. It is evident there are significant issues surrounding the proposal. With $1.2 million properties, this development is not intended for the existing residents of Kimberley, but rather speculative and weekend owners. The new development will do nothing to increase the supply of affordable housing, but instead burden existing residents with a myriad of new challenges that would profoundly impact our community and access to the existing Lois Creek Trail system. Number 1, town site road access and evacuation. Town site has a single ingress egress. During recent road upgrades, it was clear how heavily the town site hill is utilized by current residents, with long delays during periods of single lane traffic. Can this route support the increase of potentially up to 100 new vehicles from the proposed development? What is the limit? We're particularly concerned about emergency response capabilities during possible scenarios such as wildfire evacuations or emergency access to the Kimberley Medical Clinic.
So Councillor Cairns, have you got comments on those?
Well,
comments?
so
Because council has reviewed the letter.
right, so okay, I just want to, I'll just say the topic areas from each one of them, and then I do have some comments. So local traffic safety and speed, water, sewer, wastewater infrastructure. We all know about town site and the requirements on the upgrades. Can the system handle the new demands? Will the developer contribute to solution? And when completed, will the new wastewater treatment plant will have limited capacity, and with a rapidly expanding population, how much of the current overhead are we willing to allocate to second luxury homes instead of affordable housing? Burdens to existing community services, affordability, displacement. I'm not sure that people who weren't at the open house know exactly how much the properties are being listed for, but we're looking at over $1 million, and and I'll get into the rental piece a little bit later. And the Lois Creek Trail access, the open house residents received conflicting messages about future access to the Lois Creek Trail system, primarily regarding the trails on the bench area, which provides vital connection to the trail network. One development representative explained local residents would no longer be able to access the bench due to it being on private land. Okay, and so just the summary, which I think is really important to be clear, we're aware of the housing crisis in Kimberley, not against development. We support the City of Kimberley pursuing opportunities for increased housing that meets the needs of Kimberley residents. However, we are not supportive of unsustainable luxury development that will exacerbate the existing problems in the community and diminish the values held dearly by existing residents. We are convinced Kimberley can do better, and we want to be part of the solution and look forward to hearing from you and opening a space for dialogue to address these concerns. So I was at the open house when asking questions. That the developer is advertising 16 single-family homes at the open house and on the website. And when I asked about the multi-unit resident rentals, I was told, like, just basically a shake of the head, like that's not going to happen, by the developer's representative. So when I looked back at the March 27th, 2023 staff report, where we approved the development permit and the rezoning, it was based on some of the benefits, which included that increased density, so 6 duplex units in phase 1, full use of R2 zoning to create a variety of long-term rental housing, dwellings 1 to 3 bedrooms, accommodating a wide range of renters, designed specifically for families attracted by the nearby school, existing Lois Creek trails to be enhanced by a large open space located on land proximate to Fernie Street, owned by the developer. So all of these benefits that were presented at the time that the development permit was approved are in question. So my question is, what do we have to hold the developer to account for our understanding when we approve that development permit. When I asked at the open house about emergency egress, it was essentially waived off. And I think it's critical that we have a well-communicated egress plan before further residents are added into town site. And we need to understand about our infrastructure and servicing pressure, and that is currently, borne by existing tax-paying residents who aren't benefiting from this. So the and I guess, one thing I'm going to add in there, it was also mentioned about childcare. We have 140 spaces for childcare that we hope to open in Marysville. We have no housing that early childhood educators could afford to live in. We need housing that is in the neighborhood of $1,200 a month and less for rent. So I'll leave it there. I'm really concerned about the impression that was given that we would be receiving some a wide variety of rentals, and just basically told, not going to happen. So that's my concern.
Thanks for that, Councillor Cairns. I guess on a couple of fronts, what do we have to hold the developer accountable is the development permit. That's what we hold them accountable for. And with respect to the newest development, we haven't had anything come to council yet. So we can't assess or, make comments on anything until we get that proposal that comes to council. Troy has indicated it's coming a little bit later this year. When it gets here, we'll be able to take a look at that. The good news is the letters that are coming in and highlighting the issues that people have, staff get those and it becomes part of the evaluation process. But there's a very defined process in place for how we deal with that. And one is the pre-development process, which they're going through right now. Once the DP is issued, then we've got other processes to follow to ensure that that development is exactly as the developer has laid it out. So there are checks and balances in place. And I would encourage everyone not to panic at this point, because nothing is happening until it comes through us. And that is yet to come. Did you want to add anything, Troy?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can tackle all of that. I guess like some of those are obviously very important questions and fair questions. I think that I think that we are considering, and we need to continue considering throughout the community. These are all important considerations, and many aspects of those questions are being reviewed and considered through our development review process. Specifically around the infrastructure. We're working with the consulting engineers for the developer and the city's engineers as well to ensure that the servicing plan here can be accommodated with our wider system throughout the community. There's I would say at this point, no major red flags or concerns there. Obviously, there's details that need to be sorted out, but we anticipate that those details will be able to be resolved. I think I feel like maybe there's some confusion about the various parts of this overall proposal. There's quite a large piece of land north of Fernie Street that's one big parcel, one owner right now. I mentioned earlier the development permit that has been approved by council applies to only a small portion of that, and that's the proposed lots that are right adjacent to Fernie Street in front of will be fronting Fernie Street, and that's the multi-unit residential. So kind of the principal half duplex units with a secondary suite in the principal building, and then a detached accessory dwelling. That was what was approved in the development permit. If the developer has decided or eventually decided that they change their mind about that, then that would be an amendment to the development permit and subject to council approval. There will be a development permit for the multi-lot subdivision, which is another part, as I referred to as kind of the upper bench area, that kind of looping of 5th and 6th Avenue past Fernie Street. That is a multi-lot residential subdivision. It's part of the R2 zone. It has been for a long time. It's been designated in the official community plan for future residential development. So, part of that planning has been in the work for quite a long time. Again, at this time, it's my understanding that they don't propose any multi-unit residential buildings in that multi-lot subdivision. It is a lower density subdivision, probably something like Forest Crown with a mix of, primarily single unit dwellings. Perhaps there'll be some accessory units or, duplex units. The zoning does allow for more. There's potential for that, but it's our understanding that the developer is looking at the lower density housing styles there for that project. Again, if that changes after a development permit is approved by council, then that'll be subject to further review. But for now, we're working within the guidelines of the current OCP, the zoning, and the subdivision servicing bylaw. And the proponent has been cooperative with all of that to date. I know some of the other concerns in the letters there have to do with trail access on the lower bench area, part of the Lois Creek Trail network, and we're making sure, communicating with the proponents there that it's really important to the community that trail access be maintained. We don't anticipate any major impacts or disruption of that of the existing trail network on that lower bench area at this time. There may be, we know that there's other longer range future plans for that lower bench area, but that is going to be subject to further review and approval. It's not being proposed or contemplated by staff at this time. That in fact will require official community plan amendment for that lower bench area. When we know more about those proposals, what would be required for, it'll need development permit at least, but whether or not it needs zoning approval, we don't know yet. And at that time, that there might be some change of trail access, but we've made it very clear to the proponents there that that's expected, that they're obviously, and it's in their own interest for their success of their development to make sure that their development and the rest of the neighborhood is continues to have access to Lois Creek Trail network and doesn't disrupt that. So I don't think there's anything to be concerned with that regard. In the near term, and in the long term, I think we're well positioned to make sure that is in the long term as well. So I'll maybe cut it off there, and sorry about any background noise there.
Yep, no problem. Thanks very much, Troy. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate bringing this all forward at a time, but as with others, I don't have the data with which to make a decision. I do, however, want to point out a couple of things that are little panic events that I hear from time to time, not just in this presentation, but in other presentations. And that is that Townside only has one egress route. That's not correct. There is another route. And if there was ever an emergency call, that route would be open. It's a locked route, but it's available. So you don't have to panic about that. The second thing I wanted to mention was that 100 people does not mean 100 cars. If you've got families, it probably means 25 cars. And big week, it might mean 50 because you've each got 2 cars. So the traffic is kind of overblown in this letter. And thirdly, bear with me on this one. When I was a child, I moved into a brand new house in Lois Creek. Didn't have hot pavement, didn't have sidewalks, still doesn't. And I had conversations with my mother about what it was like to move into that neighborhood at the time. She says, oh my goodness, you wouldn't believe it. If you know my mom, she talked like this. And she said, you wouldn't have believed it. She says, they were afraid we wouldn't have any water. They were afraid there was going to be too much traffic. What if everybody got a car? And interestingly enough, Lois Creek worked it out. And times change and things work out, and it didn't get crazy. And so I think just trying to keep it in balance here with the reality of what we need to do. This is a community that is 3 blocks wide and 3 miles long. And if you want to build a place, whether it's fancy housing or affordable housing, you've got to find a piece of land you can build it on affordably. And we have only a few pieces of land like that. The rest of it is like this. And so I think we need to bear with council and the engineers and the people that are trying to do their best to meet all of these demands, to make sure that we meet the needs of our community, not necessarily the people that want to come to the community to live the high life, but people who just want to live here and have a nice job and make a living and send their kids to school. I think that's been our overriding point of view all the time. We are fortunate that we have some of the people that have brought their income from another place because we don't have jobs for those people. But they're the people that are paying taxes on the high-end pieces, the high-end homes that are allowing us to do some of this other stuff. And without them, there's a whole bunch of services we would not have. So I just want to ask for some monitoring, fine. But I think we need to look at it from all points of view. And please trust that we have all of your best interests at heart, every one of us here. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this job.
Thanks for that, Councillor Roberts. It is, you know, if we go back over the last number of developments that we've had in Kimberley, everyone wants to know details early on. And we have defined processes in place for being able to iteratively move through and for staff to be able to assess, make recommendations, negotiate with developers, et cetera. And we just need to let that process play itself out. At every stage in there, there is opportunity for both staff and for council to be able to massage what's happening. So I think I want to echo your comment about, you know, what we do is always in the best interest of the community. Not everybody's going to agree. Not everybody does agree because we got 8,000 different opinions in town. But at the end of the day, our job is to make decisions that are in the best interest of the community. And that's what we do to the best of our ability. So I would ask for patience. And thank you for the letters and the comments because staff do take those. They take them into considerations in the conversations that they're having with the developers. Okay. If it's quick. Yeah. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for pointing that out. Will, what are we using that money for exactly?
I believe that one is a project completion on that end of it. It would have been not sure of the CRI number and which project would have been I guess a part of. Yeah, so it would have been one of the projects of just fuels treatment in a 15 hectare, 20 hectare polygon where we've treated or even gotten ready for prescribed burn. So
have we managed to catch some of that up here between the fall and early spring? Sorry for putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's a catch-up thing. It's always a working forward thing. So it's something that's always moving forward. It never really stops. It does slow down, but this is something we're always working on.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that. Okay, that's it for the regular agenda. We do have it in camera tonight. But before we get into that, we will call for questions. And members of the public, both the gallery here in council chamber, plus anybody on watching us on the YouTube channel, can call in and ask questions about anything that was on the agenda tonight. And it's about questions. It's not about rehashing the conversation that we've already had, but if there's anything that has come out of that, now is the time. If you are watching on the YouTube channel, the number to call is 800-741-7180. And when prompted, the meeting number is 2771-604-7336. So while we wait and see if anybody is calling in, was there anybody in council chamber that had any questions about what was on the agenda tonight? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, the microphone, please. There we go.
Okay, my name is Blake Rawson. I live in town site. I've been involved with the Friends of Lois Creek for over 40 years. And this is an existential issue that's upon us. Like I respect
So,
Sanders. Yeah.
just to reinforce, it's question period,
Okay, I'm going to come
not
to a question.
statements. If
Little
you,
editorial and
if
then
you
a
could-
question, okay? Is that okay?
question, please.
Okay, when does the public process happen for input for the development? I've had a lot of input with the developer, but not with the city.
Well, actually, that's happening right now. The letters that are coming in are all part of the public record and part of the consideration that staff are going
No,
through.
but I mean, when do we get the nitty gritty? You're there, the developer's there, and we can ask the hard questions from the residents and ourselves that are interested in what's going to happen up there.
When the development permit comes to council, it's discussed at council, and there'll be an opportunity for the public then to listen to what that is and provide questions back.
At the council level, not a special public meeting
No.
like at
No.
Centennial.
Troy, did you want to make comment on public hearing? Please?
Yeah, you can hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, just to reiterate, well, at this time, we're not anticipating any requirement for a public hearing. Like I said, the official community plan and the zoning allow for and align with what's proposed there. The mayor is correct. There will be a development permit at a certain point. We don't know yet exactly what meeting date that will be, but at an upcoming meeting, there will be a development permit decision for council to make. I would clarify that process does not typically or does not involve an opportunity for neighbors to provide or have an opportunity to speak at council or to provide critique or feedback. The time for that is when the official community plan and zoning is set, I guess. Granted, there's not detail available for projects at that time, but that's not how the process works, I guess. But when we get to the development permit stage, there'll be a chance to see in detail what is being proposed and what's being recommended by staff around that permit. There's some lead up prior to the meeting, so the agendas are made available and they can be viewed by anybody prior to that. If there's feedback on that, we can certainly receive questions and feedback on the proposal and the report at that time. But at this point, we're not anticipating any zoning change that would trigger a public hearing. And we're not anticipating any, variances or relaxation of requirements that would require or involve an opportunity for detailed feedback. I'm really happy to hear that there's good discussion with the proponents. We'll encourage you to continue that discussion because that's really what helps to make sure that they're hearing loud and clear from community members. Certainly, there's any questions directed to the city. Like I said, until that report comes to council, that's when we'll know what the sort of final proposed plan is there. Like I said, the proponent has been cooperative with staff and working within the rules and regulations that have been set in bylaw by council. So I think I'll leave it at that in case there's any other questions.
Another question?
Yeah,
Quick question. Maybe for Troy too. We have no license of occupation with this landholder right now. It expired 2 years ago. And to my knowledge, and my documents show it hasn't been renewed. So there's nothing that officially allows us to go on that land, except that people's, in the past history, they don't even know it's private land. So maybe a question to Troy or someone here, is there something beyond license of occupation which can be terminated by either party within 30 days, which is pretty fragile for the amount of use and love that trail system has? So is there another step, are you aware of, Troy, like a statutory that would move with that land? Like this landowner, I've talked to him several times, but if he sells off a chunk of that land or sells to another landowner, it may not be the same level of communication or understanding.
Yeah, thanks, Blake. That's a good question. yeah, those are some of the conversations we're having, is trying to make sure that we can ensure that long-term public access through the private lands and part of the Lois Creek network. As I said, the proponents there have been cooperative to date, and they're well aware of those concerns from the community and from staff and from council. It's a policy that's set out in our fiscal community plan, and that's what we're looking to implement. There's a couple of mechanisms that can be done to or can be used to ensure that. And I would agree that the current situation is certainly not ideal in the long run. The one mechanism, I think, as you mentioned, was a statutory right of way. So it's a defined, defined area or route through the property that's defined usually by survey and attached to a legal document that's registered against title. We've used that in some cases in other areas, other projects. In some other cases, we've also had the land or parts of the land dedicated that includes a trail, or that just dedicating the land that's the trail. And basically, those are the two key objectives, I guess, is we're trying to make sure we can secure that long-term route through the property. It might be that there's some change of route through the property, but as we've communicated, our objective here is to make sure that the wider network is still accessible. What exactly that route is I guess maybe subject to change in the long run. Again, in the short term, there's no change proposed, no change anticipated. Like you said, there's some risk there that there's a change of landowner, and that's part of why we want to try to make sure that we secure that more permanent solution there for trail access.
Okay, thank you, Troy. Thanks, Council.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Blake. Pardon me. We had any callers in?
There's no callers, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, hey, Don.
Go ahead.
Hey, first of all, let me start off by saying thank you to all of you for what you do. I hate coming down here when I have a complaint or I just want to stick
Comes out anytime.
I know, but I come here when I do complain. And so you're surprised to see me as I am to see you. I got a phone call at 4:00 today, and really I came for one reason. I do have a question. That is, I just wanted you to know how concerned local residents felt. And I think if we had a public forum, we would have had 200 or 300 people here. I could have done that. I'm not trying to be difficult. I have questions. Here's one. And going back to 2011, before any of you were on council, even Don wasn't here then. That's when we had our initial meetings about Sullivan Landing. No, so 2014 you joined, didn't you, Sandra? Were you here? Yeah, so 2011 we had those initial meetings, and they were difficult. This was a new change. We came with 4 requests, the developer, which was, kind of reasonable working hours, and so we didn't hear construction all the time, a 30-meter buffer. There's a trail shown in the OCP through that land, and an egress that didn't come in through the existing community. We were turned down on all of those. We did get a 15-meter buffer, which I really appreciate. I have come here several times to defend it against variance. But at that meeting, there are 2 things really stand out. One was that we were told this was a subdivision that was going to be green. It was going to be eco-proof. It was going to be built within the woods. And also the other thing was, don't worry about building your own trail. We asked for that 30-meter buffer for a trail. They would be building a trail, and it's shown on their plans right through the center of that subdivision. That was 13 years ago. There's no trail there now. So I only say that's an entire generation of kids. That trail was meant to connect Lois Creek to the Nurses Trail in the OCP. It hasn't been built. And you know what happened when Sullivan Landing was built? It was completely clear cut. My question is, what are we going to do to protect the access to those trails? I hear a lot of things. I'm not confident in that. I'm concerned about that. So that's one question. There's no answer to that, but I just want you to know. The other question that there is no answer to is, it really feels like Sullivan Landing does not exist in the character of the rest of Townside. And maybe Sandra's right. Maybe it will get amalgamated. I wonder about that. I wait to see kids coming out of that subdivision and I worry, but it feels like this addendum on the edge of where we live. And that is a large number of people who've invested their lives and their income, decide to move here and live in a certain way. and it feels out of place. And I think the vast concern that you're hearing from residents, and I think you will hear. When I told my son's music teacher I was on my way here, saying, "Oh my God, I didn't know I would have come." I think you will hear more. And I think that is what can we do? And it's like my question and challenge you, what can we do to help this thing that's going to evolve north of Bernie Street feel like it's a part of Townsite, that it adds to Townsite? I think Townsite residents feel like they've borne, there's been the sound of construction for 13 years now, and it's never stopped. And now this thing of equal size is going to go for another period of that time. So that's why there's concern.
So
They're unanswerable questions, but I throw them out there. And I
Thanks,
appreciate what you do.
Thanks for the rhetorical questions, Bruce.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to answer.
No, I think in part, we've talked around this a little bit tonight, where it's up to staff to take the feedback, and you're already doing. The answer to the first question is you're already doing what you need to be doing in terms of getting those concerns back. Staff is taking them, and we'll come up with the best possible proposal that we can. I think, it's also important, to recognize that, Townsite's pretty old, and these are new subdivisions going in. And so, kind of that mix of character, there's always going to be a bit of a contrast that's going to happen when the new, comes in, backstopping the old. And it is private land, developable within the context of the OCP and, the bylaws and all the rest of it. And it behooves staff to ride herd on the developers to get the best possible development there. And I, for one, have total confidence in our staff that they will do the right thing for the community.
Cool. Yeah, that was really, I realized.
Not everybody may agree. I
Yeah,
should point that out,
absolutely.
but it will be the best that we can make it.
Cool. Thank you guys all very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Go ahead.
Two questions. I'm wondering if any of you guys received invites to the open house itself. Yeah.
Yep.
What they're proposing differs greatly from what's in city council plans, and that's why we kind of came forward with our concerns. And we're not necessarily panicked. My question is, those rental properties are being proposed as investment opportunities, 1.2 million starting. For me, I'm wondering, what is affordable housing in Kimberley? Like, what can existing residents work within? And is that reasonable, especially with the additional single family lots going for 170, and then the housing that you can choose 4 different designs from of what the developers are proposing, starting at 700,000. How does someone in Kimberley that lives here full time get into that?
So I'm going to assume that's a bit of a rhetorical question as well. I think if I may, and Troy, feel free to jump in here as well. The fact is, we need all kinds of housing here in Kimberley right now. Affordable is a contextual thing in this day and age. It really is terrible that it is what it is. But if you are building a new building, a new dwelling today, and you want that dwelling to be 1,200 square feet, you are looking at $600,000. That's not the developer that's gouging. That is what it costs to put that dwelling up, sadly. It's one of the reasons why we have been pushing for 2 things. Number 1, multi-unit residential, and secondly, rental, multi-unit residential rental, both of which will help with affordability. Let's face it, if you want affordable, you have to build smaller. You have to have smaller footprint. Everything has to be smaller. And we're starting to see some developments that are coming under construction right now that fall into that category. We do the best we can with developers to encourage them to build the type of housing that is required in the community. And for the most part, we're getting good response from developers on what they have to work with and where that's happening. The term affordability, though, is really different for everybody. And if we're talking about brand new buildings, it's really expensive. It's just the cost of building. Appreciate the questions. We're going to do the best we can. Yeah, thank you. Go ahead, Sue.
make a comment on that, and that we do have a definition of affordable housing, and that's 30% of wage, and that's the federal definition. And the way that, you know, adjacent communities are approaching that is by building, partnering to build with CMHC financing. There's a city very close by that a developer has just donated a piece of land for the purpose of affordable housing, and that does involve the city partnering with a developer and using CMHC funding, which is suitable and available. So that is an option, is to look at that.
Yeah, so just so you know, the 2 projects under construction right now are both CMHC financed, and 3 that we have sitting on the back burner are also all CMHC financed. So we're on that. We've got a lot of units that are going to be coming into inventory here in the next probably 12 to 24 months. The Rotary Drive development and also the Marysville development, the West Castle development out of Marysville. Those are the 2 under construction right now that are both CMHC financed. Up a minimum of 10% for 4 units.
Or
And
it's-
60
so
units. West Castle is 60 units, and Rotary Drive Harvest is 40 units.
Okay.
So 10% of those will fall into that. Yeah. Okay, Sandra, go ahead. We have to get the in-camera. This will be the last comment.
Yep. Twice I've heard the term of $1.2 million now, as Don has just indicated, that's likely the cost of building a duplex in these days and age, and whoever buys it, whether the developer rents it out or somebody else buys it to rent it out, they pay for it with the rent. That's how we get rental properties. And what we're finding and have been finding over the last 10 years, finding developers that are prepared to build something that's rentable has been virtually impossible. They want to build, sell, leave. They don't want to hang around and worry about the whole rental thing at all. And so the fact that the mayor's been able to convince a number of entities to come forth and build something with rental potential that people can afford to actually move into and rent has been like a straw in his cap, because we have not been able to do that for years. Everybody wanted to build and leave.
So we're getting there,
Yes.
you know, is the bottom line. So stay tuned. Okay. Oh, yeah. We didn't vote on receipt of the correspondence. It's time to call the question. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you. Since there's nobody on YouTube, I need a motion to go in camera. Councillor Royer moves, Councillor McGuire seconds. All those in favor? That motion is carried. Okay, we're heading in camera, so we have to kick everybody out. Thanks very much for being here tonight. Yeah, you bet. I'm sure we'll chat again. See you guys.